So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I am delighted to be back doing some transfer talk stuff. This is the first real new kind of link that we've had in the summer, and I wanted to pop on and I wanted to chat to you guys about it. It's about a really exciting and rising star of German football and French national team football as well, and it's Maxence Lacroix. He is a Wolfsburg centre half, 22 years of age, and I wanted to pop on because he's a very small sample set, 2 years of playing senior football, essentially. But he does have an interesting story. He does have some really, really interesting attributes. I saw him very much so last year when Wolfsburg finished fourth in the Bundesliga. But I haven't watched an awful lot of Bundesliga football this season. I haven't watched an awful lot of Wolfsburg football this season. So it was interesting to kind of dig into him, see what he was like. Get my eyes on a bit and some footage of him, and I suppose really make up my mind as to what I think of him. As I said, he's 22-year-old, right-footed centre half, and I think it's really interesting why Villa might be targeting somebody like Maxence Lacroix. And as I say, without further ado, let's take a little look at him. And as always, I do have some slides, so let's pop up some of these slides here and let's chat about Mr. Lacroix. So, as I mentioned, he is French. He's 6'2.5". He's right-footed, and he was born on the 6th of April, 2000. Yeah, we're signing players that were born in 2000. I'm struggling with that one myself. He's played 64 senior games, all of them have been with Wolfsburg, 5,628 minutes. He has played for the club as well. Or in professional football, should I say, at the centre half position. He came up through the Sochaux academy, and they're well thought of academy in France. And realistically, because it's not because they pump out brilliant player after brilliant player after brilliant player after brilliant player, but when they hit really, really well. Jeremy Menez, former PSG, former France player, came from Sochaux. More recent people, Konate from for Liverpool. He's actually only 22 as well. He came from Sochaux, from their youth setup, and I would go so far as to say, without having the information to hand, that both Lacroix and Konate probably could have played together in the underage setup at Sochaux. But as I say, so when they're hitting things, they seem to really, really hitting them. And that I found is really, really interesting, because we do know that the French academy system really does churn out and pump out certain players or certain types of players. And specifically, I suppose, what we're seeing is, just like Konate, now obviously playing for Liverpool, he moved from the French system in Sochaux into the German system with Leipzig, and now he's in the Premier League, and we're seeing him. He's adapted. He's a big, strong guy. With Lacroix, he's done the exact same thing. He's moved into from the French system into the German system, and now there is rumors that both us and West Ham are looking at signing him. I've seen price points anywhere from 17 million to 20 million, all the way up as far as 34 million for Lacroix. And it is, as I say, I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess at what he will cost. But for me, what I think the biggest things that we could, the biggest thing that, you know, that stands out to me is he's tall at 6'2.5". You know, so he's not going to get bullied around the place. He is a slighter type frame, an incredibly aggressive player when you watch him play. What I mean by that is he wants to engage you straight away. The numbers bear that out as well, and we will talk about that in a moment. He does have a small sample set, as you can see there on the right-hand side. It is only a 2-season sample set, but he has played in European competition as well. And, you know, he has, you know, he's been playing first-team football since he's been just turned 17 as well with Sochaux's second team. Then he progressed on to Sochaux's first team in 2018 when he was only 18 years of age, and then he got the move to Wolfsburg in 2020. So he's a French under 20 international. He's came all the way up through all the French through the French grades, under 16, 17, 18, under 20. He's still currently, I think he's still currently eligible to play with the under 20s. So he may be available for still available for selection there, but he hasn't been called into any of the senior squads yet. He's of Guadeloupean descent as well, which I don't know what difference that makes, but I just thought it was an interesting fact that he is from that he's of Guadeloupean descent. I think his father is from Guadeloupe as well. But he is so as I say, he's found a home at Wolfsburg in his second season at Wolfsburg. He really commanded things back there, playing with the American centre half John Brooks. Some of you may remember him from World Cups gone past. Now, John Brooks as well was at Schalke. I think he moved from Schalke to Wolfsburg. A steady defender, a defender who took like a duck to water to German football. A very experienced defender, but a defender that likes to hold his position and likes to defend from. Likes to let people come on to him and probably better in the air. And why I'm saying that is that Lacroix is definitely an aggressive type of player. He wants to engage people high. He wants to break the defensive line, run and get to the source of the problem as such. He does have a high percentage of blocks and interceptions, as we'll see in a moment. He's speedy, and we can see there by his heat map. For a centre half, he spends an awful lot of time out in the right wing. He likes. It's a difficult one. I think he's speedy, but I don't think he is as comfortable in wide positions as for the amount of time he spends out there, if that makes sense. Which I suppose for Aston Villa, the fact that he can cover the ground like he can here is probably a benefit, because we do know that we want our fullbacks to carry themselves up the field, but I think it also can be a negative as well in the fact that we don't want our centre half spread too wide either. But look, I suppose really what I'm getting at here is that the options will be there for him, that he can cover ground. He's speedy. He's a lot better, keeping the play in front of him from the point of view he wants to engage. He wants to get at you. He wants to tackle you early. He wants to get in your face and try and intercept that ball. I wouldn't. From watching him, I don't conflate that with naivety. I don't conflate it with exuberance, if that makes sense. He is, when he gets to the ball, when he gets there, he gets there. Put it that way, So when he makes a tackle, he is when he makes a tackle or tries to make an interception or tries to block something, he more than likely will block that ball. So he makes a calculated decision and engages early, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. When we look at him in comparison with some of our current defenders, we'll see that they don't do that. They pull away, they kind of back away from engagement, and sometimes that can allow defenders, or allow attackers, should I say, to get further into our half. And we know that that's what Aston Villa have done under Dean Smith, and we've continued to do it under Steven Gerrard. We retreat to the sanctity of our just in front of our own box, or sometimes into our box, and then we protect that D in front of our box. That's what we did under Dean Smith. That's what we've continued to do under Steven Gerrard, and then hope our defensive midfielders come back. With somebody like this, maybe the idea is that we would take them on a small bit, or we would have maybe a slightly higher line, and we would allow us to have a slightly higher line. The fact that we could take on, or because this guy's natural ability is to engage people earlier, we can engage them earlier, maybe breaking up those attacks and allowing us to start counterattacks from a more fortuitous position for us. Or also, if you engage somebody and you slow down the attack early on, even if they get around him, he does get dribbled past, but we can see here 0.49 times per 90 minutes. He's still in the 58th percentile. He's not, he's pretty okay at tackling dribblers. and the amount of times that he does tackle people, like, it is 60.5% of the time he does tackle somebody who is on the dribble, which is in the top 80 percentile of the top 5 leagues in Europe. So it just goes to show that he does engage early. He likes to get people when they're in full flow, and more often than not, he will get a block in, he will get an interception in there, and he will be pretty successful, with stuff like that. He's not a pressure merchant. What I mean by that is that he doesn't usher people into areas. We can see that there. He pressures a lot, but the success of those pressures is only 31.6%, which keeps him in the 13th percentile. And we'll see how that tallies up with other players in a moment. But for me, what he does is when he goes full-blooded and full-throated, he tends to get the ball, he tends to intercept, he tends to block. We can see that there with his blocks at 1.99 blocks per game. Of those, he blocks 1.36 passes per game, which is really interesting. Remember what I was saying there? If you can block a pass higher up the field, we can create our counter-attack in a more fortuitous position. He intercepts the ball 4.15 times per 90 minutes, which is fantastic stuff. 99 percentile, top of the class for that one as well. Pretty decent in the air, as we can see there, at 63.9%. And he commits fouls at a rate of 1.3 per game. So all in all, he's a really interesting character. He's a really interesting defender. He's something completely different to what we have at the moment in the way that he backs himself to tackle, he backs himself to defend, to be an aggressive defender, should I say, where a lot of our defenders retreat and try and keep everything in front of them. He likes to have things in front of him so that he can go and find man, get man, find ball, get ball situation, which I really, really like to see. One of the things I do think is that he's passing, I've put down here, his passing needs to improve. I think his passing can improve. And what I mean by that is that he's only 22 years of age. He's only new to senior football. We see here that he attempts passes at a rate of 54.7. He completes 44.8, one of those per 90. He's an 81.9% completion rate, which I'd like to see a bit better. A lot of his passing it doesn't tell a full story, because what he does is a lot of his passing is into space at times. If he does go long, he tries to go long into space to for a striker to run onto, as opposed to for a striker to flick the ball onto. So sometimes they can be seen as an unsuccessful pass. But what it does is when he plays it into that space, it tries, you see with Wolfsburg, what they do is they push up really, really quickly. And they did this brilliantly last year. It's almost like in the game of rugby, playing for territory. And he's really good at it. He can play it into space, keep the ball in play, allows a nippy, fast striker a la Ollie Watkins to maybe try and pressure and have the counter press start high up in the opponent's box, or the opponent's territory, should I say. It also allows midfield to get a small bit more coherent in there, to allow them to, I suppose, get their shape, so that attacks could be marshaled a small bit better. And when you contrast that with some of the passing that Aston Villa's centre halves do at the moment, it's directly towards the striker for flick-ons. 9 times out of 10, Ollie Watkins doesn't get those. His hold-up play isn't great, and the other team have the ball, and immediately they've got a platform 30 to 35 yards outside their goal where they can launch an attack. So sometimes playing it into space, over the top, into the corners, trying to keep that ball in place so that everybody can rush up. I think it's a really, really smart tactic. I've seen him do it a couple of times. I hope it's by design, because if it is, I enjoy watching it. But he did it more times than would have been coincidental, if that makes sense for me. We can see here he makes a lot of passes under pressure. He's very comfortable with the ball, with making passes under pressure. I reluctantly was going to say he's very comfortable with the ball at his feet. For a 22-year-old, he's still has a bit to learn with regards to that, but we can see here that his passes under pressure 7.73 at 7.73 successful passes under pressure per game, which is fantastic, and it's up in the upper echelons. His progressive passes are there as well in the top 69% along with the distances, 71% there, 365.4 yards per progressive pass as well. I suppose really looking at this, what the two areas of, I'm not going to say negativity, but that highlight the way that he plays, that jump off the page to me, are his pressure success rate. While he does pressure an awful lot, when he gets there, he gets the ball and he tries to, he turns that pressure into an actual tackle. So it's an interesting one sometimes whereby statistics can kind of fall down or they can be read through the wrong lens, I suppose, or they can fall down through the cracks. And it doesn't really bother me that much, the fact that his pressure success rate is low. Also, his pass completion rate there at 81.9%. My own hypothesis in that is the way that he plays passes. Sometimes he plays them, and I think it may have been something that Wolfsburg wanted him to do, as I say. Play it into the corners, try and keep that ball in play, make sure that it goes over the defense, so the defense have to get turned to try and get that ball, allows our midfield and our defense to push up, also allows a nippy forward like somebody, as I said, like Ollie Watkins, to try and create that counter press high up the field. And it could have been a tactic, but I could not say that for sure. Anyway, let's take a look at him in relation to Tyrone Mings. So we can see here we've got a lot of green on the left-hand side, and we don't have as much green on the right-hand side. I always preface this, and I'm going to do it again. This is not saying Mings is a bad footballer. This is not saying that Mings is a bad footballer. This is not saying Mings is a bad footballer. What this is showing, what this could show, is the different way that teams set up in defense, or the different type of defenders that the players are. So this isn't an absolute pile-in on Mings. We've got Konza next. We've got Ruben Diaz next. Okay? So it'll become apparent this isn't a pile-in. This is how teams play and how they value probably the assets that a defender can bring to the team. Caveat over. So we can see here that Lacroix has a higher tackle rate per 90 minutes. Once again, as I say, he wants to engage people. It just goes to show our defenders don't. He also he's tackles dribblers more. Once again, I would imagine that because we back off, and you'll see that with Ezri Konza as well. We don't engage dribblers. We back off and we get our blocks in. We back off. We try and usher them into positions, and that's why we protect the box and we protect the D in front of that box. That's apparent. We can see here as well that because sometimes Lacroix does engage people higher up the field, he does get dribbled past more than someone like Tyrone Mings. Because if you're keeping your distance from somebody who's running at you and you're backpedaling and you're good at it and you're turning around and you're ushering people, well, then they're not going to dribble past you. That's a skill in itself. That's a really, really good skill to have, and it's a complementary skill that somebody must have if this guy does sign for us. And we'll see here the pressure successes are much the same for now, albeit that Lacroix has a higher pressure rate than Mings does. Once again, we don't pressure. We back off. We retreat. We have a very retreat-minded defense. The statistics just show it. With regards to blocks, much of a muchness. I've colored them yellow there because there's nothing in it. Passes blocked, we see once again we've got an aggressive, combative defender. He's obviously going to block more passes. He's going to have more interceptions. This is actually an interesting one for me, that the interceptions, I would have thought Tyrone Mings had intercepted the ball more, because, you tend to see him a lot of the time intercept the ball in the box, or when somebody kind of gets muddled up in a dribble in the box, he'll stick a leg in there and he'll intercept it. And I notice people roaring at the screen now going, well, he didn't do that for Salah against Liverpool when he gave away a penalty. Let it lie, it was ages ago. But I thought that his interceptions might be a small bit higher. But it just goes to show that this guy from Wolfsburg has an elite level of interceptions, as a defender. We're looking at the passing statistics then, and this, I suppose, really shows where what we can all really see. So the pass attempts for Mings, we don't use him an awful lot as a weapon. He goes long. We absolutely know that. I can see here that with Mings, I've mixed up his pass attempts and his pass completions. So I hope you will forgive me for that. So he's attempted 43.35 passes in comparison to Lacroix, who has attempted for 57.70. And when we look at the pass completion statistics, Maxence has a better pass completion rate. He's a better progressive passes. He's a better progressive pass distance, and he makes more passes under pressure, which once again absolutely stands to reason. Teams back off Tyrone Mings because they know he will go along. We want him to go along as a team as well. So it just goes to show different styles of defenders, different styles, the way the teams want to defend in different ways. Could they be a complement to each other? Well, left-footed Tyrone Mings and right-footed Maxence Lacroix could be a very, very good complement to each other. the fact that they do different things. Now, let's look at him in comparison to Ezri Konsa. So, as we know, Ezri Konsa is a right-footed centre-half that complements Tyrone Mings. And we can see here once again that it's very, very, very similar. Very similar, in fact, to how Tyrone Mings plays. So it just goes to show we want our two centre-halves to do the same thing. We retreat. We don't tackle dribblers. We can see here with Ezri Konsa, he doesn't tackle the dribblers. Doesn't tackle dribblers at a high rate. We can see he doesn't make an awful lot of tackles. We can see here that he doesn't pressure the ball an awful lot. When he does pressure it, he's very successful, and I think that stands to reason that we know when we see him because he does pressure the ball. The biggest thing for Ezri Konsa as well is he doesn't get dribble past. We know that as well. He's consistently at the top of the league in players who don't get dribble past. So none of these statistics are new to me. They just go to show how we actually defend, how we're defending at the moment. Now, for me, what is really kind of interesting with Ezri Konsa is look how low his passing statistics are. We don't trust him to pass. We don't want our centre halves to pass the ball. So Gerrard's, when people talk about we want our centre halves to be ball playing centre halves, I can't remember if Gerrard has said that. I'm sure he might have. I can't remember if Dean Smith ever said that. If they have, they've lied, because we don't want our centre halves to be ball playing centre halves. And if we do, well, then they're not doing it. You can see it here by the pass attempts, the pass completion. The pass completion percentage here is quite high for Ezri Konsa. Probably passing the ball out to Matty Cash and letting him bomb up the wing. I don't know, but he doesn't make very many progressive passes. We can see there. He doesn't have a big progressive pass distance, and he doesn't make any passes under pressure. So teams are comfortable letting our centre halves have the ball so that we will have to go long or we'll have to go sideways with the ball. It's quite apparent here. And we can see the difference that this young man could bring to the team if he was brought in, based on the fact that I've said it a million times before, take another drink if you're listening. He's combative. He's aggressive. He likes to get out there and get his foot on the ball. And he can also pass the ball pretty decently as well. And I think he's got room to improve in his passing. And what would a good passer in the Premier League look like? Well, let's have a little look at Ruben Diaz. How does he stack up against Ruben Diaz? Whoa, watch all the raid, I hear you say, with regards to the defensive statistics for Ruben Diaz. I thought he was the best defender in the league. He absolutely is, for me. He's the best defender in the league. But when we look at Ruben Diaz's passing statistics here, it just goes to show that you don't have to make an awful lot of tackles. You don't have to pressure the ball an awful lot. Don't have to block, because the team don't get the ball if you're able to pass it. If you're a passing team, if you're able to play it out from the back, if you're able to keep possession, and if you've got the talent that Man City do, you're going to be under attack a lot less. So the numbers are going to be a lot less as well. So that is to be borne in mind. We can see here though that some of the numbers here whereby Maxence Lacroix is quite I suppose he's that are quite interesting here are that it still doesn't take away that he's brilliant at intercepting the ball. Even when you look at Ruben Diaz isn't his game. He's more of he's a marshaller back there. He's for me, as I said before, he's the best defender in the Premier League. He's brilliant at pressuring the ball. We can see that there. Now, can he pressure the ball higher up the field? I would imagine so. He very rarely gets dribble past as well, but I would imagine he can pressure the ball higher up the field because he's got the likes of Rodri, he's got the likes of Fernandinho in front of him, and teams are breaking and keeping players back because they're terrified of their front three as well. So there's a lot of nuance in this. But when you look at Ruben Diaz's passes, look how many passes he makes in a game. Look how many of those he completes. Look how many progressive passes he makes in a game. And when we look at those at the last 3 points here, the progressive passes, the progressive pass distance, there isn't a million miles away there in Maxence Lacroix and Ruben Diaz. So what that leads me to believe is that I think this man believes he can be a better passer of the ball. I think if he's given the ball to pass a small bit more, that he potentially can. But do Aston Villa want to transition there? I'm sure they weren't going to do it mid-season with Steven Gerrard when he came in, but the off-season will tell an awful lot. So that's pretty much going to do it. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. As I say, it's an exciting transfer for me. I couldn't even hazard a guess at what the price would be. In fact, it's not my money. I'm not going to worry about prices because I think that this guy has a lot of potential. Sample set for me is very small at the moment. Based on what I've seen, he's got tons of potential. He's something a lot different than what we have already. Can that be transferred into the Premier League? I think that he probably needs a bit of a landing strip to get to the Premier League. Like, I don't notice he come in and get up to the pitch of the Premier League straight away. He probably can, but I think when you see what Liverpool have done with keeping Joel Matip in the team alongside Virgil van Dijk and allowing Konate to grow into it, I know he was injured, and he's a big strapping man at 6'4", 6'4", and he's a big bulky guy. Lacroix is 6'2.5". He isn't as bulky as Konate. Can he get to the pace of the Premier League? I suppose only time will tell if he was to sign, but I would be happy with signing him. As I say, I couldn't tell you what kind of price point he would be at, but it's an interesting one to see the different type of player that Aston Villa are looking at in comparison to what we have, and maybe that's something that Steven Gerrard is implementing because as we've seen that the two centre halves that we have are quite similar in the way they approach the game. They like to back as opposed to defend on the front foot. I don't know if Aston Villa. I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable watching an Aston Villa centre half engage people high up the field, but I'm here for a small bit of crack anyway. So I think I'd like to see it once or twice before I was to make my mind up on it. And if this guy does come in, I think we're going to see it an awful lot more. Thanks very much, everybody, for watching. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate everything you do for the podcast. If you guys could follow us on Twitter, I would really, really appreciate it. At Love McGrath Pod. If you could follow our audio podcasts, you'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You'll find us basically anywhere that you find podcasts. That would really, really help us out if you could do so. We do have a Patreon account. I don't know if anybody wants to support the podcast. You can find us on Patreon as well. But we will always be here every week giving you our thoughts on Aston Villa Football Club, and we will be back with more transfers, probably even during the course of this week, but if not, definitely into next week as we start off our 2022 transfer focus, or whatever you want to call it. We will have tons of who I think will fit in with Aston Villa Football Club, and we will also react to people who have been linked with the football club as well, as this young gentleman has been already. So thanks so much, everybody. Please like this if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to it on the audio podcast, I absolutely salute you. Find 5 friends who don't listen to us and tell them to listen to us. That will be your homework for tomorrow. But thanks for everything you do, guys. Really appreciate it. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.